do this now. I'll call this a video essay, and during this video, I will type out said video essay. Sorry for the interruption in the background. There's some static, and it says easy in the Sega font. Now, fonts are interesting. What are fonts? Now, I've been thinking about the structure of books, and I commented on this to my friend Dominic, how there are chapters and perhaps even not sections but parts, and those are higher than chapters. Lower than chapters are sections, and lower than sections are paragraphs. Now, a book may be several chapters, a few dozen chapters, and it may be a few parts, and a chapter may be a dozen, or I don't know how long a chapter is, best practices, if it can be several dozen, or it can be very few pages, right, too. Now I think this is where pages seem uh, uh, sort of irrelevant, because if you have something like House of Leaves by Danielewski, right, like over here, then you can have sort of section of the book where uh, it's just kind of like this, right? There's only one line per page, or a few lines per page on this part of the book, right? Because when Davidson and Reston finally reach the foot of the stairway, Tom is not there. It is almost noon of the third day of the rescue attempt. Reston's gloves are torn. His hands are blistered and bleeding. Wax's breathing is shallow and inconsistent. Jed's body weighs heavily on Davidson, all of which, bad as it is made even more unbearable when Davidson realizes his brother has not come down the stairs to meet him, and so on. Then it goes to the top of the page, and it's at the bottom of the page, then bottom, just a few words, a few lines, and each sometimes sort of put out, and the last pages say and just an upside down A, like this. See the upside down A right there. And what a thing. So that's why I find sections important, because sections, what do sections denote? This is for all people talk about studying, what is it but you can criticize yourself for indexing yourself to like this or that YouTuber, and this becomes a ball and chain you drag around, but that's needless, because there's a reason that certain people appeal to you, which is because at the base of it, it's just structure that appeals to you. And if somebody is appealing to that, then they're appealing to some sort of empathic structure. And that is what is important, is because you're not learning from them per se, you're not copying them, rather you are being inspired by them. And what is the first two letters of inspired? Inner. It comes from the inside, goes to the outside. And I was thinking about attention. What do we pay attention to? And that is what we remember, what we learn, what we have recall for, what we have thoughts for. And what are thoughts? There's not a dependable model for what thoughts are composed of. What are thoughts composed of? It's just messy, you know? It it comes down to, what do you word them? Can people actually hear them? Do they tell that your brain is crinkling with the folds and that you're really thinking? Or is that some sort of special connection that you have to have with somebody? Otherwise, to a stranger, you just look completely gormless, right? And you look out of your gourd and just disconnected. And that's why certain methods, certain techniques are extremely important when you're trying to embed thoughts. It's the structure that you embed thoughts in. It's not the intent, it's not the content. It is the structure, it is the compression algorithm, it is uh, the decompression into the proper information to be on the UX side of the equation rather than the UI, if I'm using those terms right. I don't actually know what they mean. It's slanging, it's doing dirty, it's riding dirty, it's doing 30, 30 birdie. Now, the point is, paragraphs, sections, chapters, parts, and paragraphs are made of sentences, and sentences are made of phrases, and, well, sentences are made of clauses, actually, and clauses are made of phrases, and phrases are made of words. So you have words, you have phrases, you have clauses, you have sentences, you have paragraphs and sections, and you have chapters, you have parts, and you have books, then you have series, like the Springer series of sort of CAD and sort of the foundries for very large scale integration chips. Then you have fields. Then you have interdisciplinary or whatever. Then you have genres, everything. So it goes down and it goes up, and you can relate anything if you want. But what's important is that you have the information compressed in such a way. You do not simply read a book or read it twice or read it 3 times, and because the algorithm has to be there. The approach to the knowledge that collates the knowledge and sees what is valuable and what is not. And that's why on a second read or a second watch, then you discern this or that thing is actually important. But of course, there are depreciating returns, but of course also there's scarcity. There's certain sources which are more valuable than others. There's certain connectivity which provides a benefit, so it's all a wash, kind of, sometimes. But the fact is that you just had to put it out there. You have to do it like it has to be done. You have to. You make me feel like a woman. I don't know. was just thinking about this whole book stuff. Because that's important. Because we don't realize at base how the building blocks sum up to the total. Most of the time, when you see a new thing or turn to a new page, it's going to be the same building blocks. Or it's going to be some building block that you wouldn't think to have been included, or it's going to be some order of understanding it that you didn't really take sort of account of, but that's just common sense. You know, if you have a workflow and you're a bricklayer, that's just common sense how you do it. You don't put a brick down before you lather it, and there's certain ways that you would put bricks down that would be more stable, right? So you just gotta remember all the bricks, don't leave a hole. Remember all the bricks, don't leave a hole. It's that simple. It's not about, you know, getting it. It's about knowing what you already know and applying that. Because baseline, how much information is new? Like, okay, I slap something and it goes, you know, and then maybe I hold it still and it's like, but then I slap it and it goes boing. Everything is basically that. That's everything that actually happens. There's no more actual interesting thing than that. Do the boing and then hold it still. Everything else is just a fancy way of saying the same thing with more steps, right? It's just the boing and then some sort of identity and sort of actual picture and sort of circumstances and a degree of hypothetical and brain testing as to your expectations happens so that you can use metaphor and you can take people along on the journey, but that's all it is a journey. It's not something to be understood, it's something to be traveled. And I don't have any clue what I'm fucking talking about. So